G'day Internet, welcome back to another video. Now, let me start by just giving you a moment to pause the video and put a comment down below regarding how I'm dressed. I've just gotten home from work. You are looking at professional Jason here, as professional as I can get. And welcome back to SepTandy and to the well-loved Model 3. This has been on the channel a few times before. It got an internal speaker, an amp, and I hooked a hard drive up to it, which isn't connected at the moment. And just a few weeks ago, I think it was, I made a post on Twitter, like this one here, regaling the fact that of all my TRS-80s, this is the most reliable, and needless to say, about 10 minutes later, it started playing up. After a while, the screen starts to flicker and does some weird things. The computer doesn't seem to reboot, but the power kind of fluctuates to the CRT. Now, this is generally caused by three things, or one of three things. The connector that goes to the CRT board, I've already checked that, it's fine. Caps on the CRT board, I don't have any in stock at the moment. Or one of the power supplies starting to give out. And yes, the Model 3 disk machine has two power supplies, one which runs the floppy drive controller and disk drives, and one that runs the main board and the CRT. So today we are going to put a modern power supply in. This is a kit provided to me by Ian Maverick, as usual, Australia's own TRS-80 guru, and it's essentially a breakout board that you hook into a Meanwell RT65B, or if you've got the diskless machine, you can get away with the 50B, but in this case, I'm using a 65B. So let's get started looking at what you get in the kit. All right, first we obviously have our instructions. We'll get to those in a second. They are quite good. It's very clear about the wiring and making sure you got your color codes and all that kind of stuff right. And then this is the actual kit here. Now, the bulk of it is this little breakout board, which takes your voltages from the Meanwell and gives you the proper little plugs to plug everything back into. It even has a couple of LEDs to show you that you've got your voltages. Also in here is the appropriate cables to go between the breakout board and the Meanwell, so that's those. And you also get a collection of stick-on Velcro thingies, zip ties, and some double-sided pads. Now these are very good quality double-sided pads, but I'm not going to use them because this is me we're talking about, and of course I've designed and 3D printed my own brackets, which are just over here. We've got this one, which will take this board, and I've just put some standoffs in it, and this one, which the Meanwell will mount to. Now, don't get me wrong, there's probably nothing wrong with using these, let's be honest. Little Velcro and double-sided sticky tape things is a very TRS-80 way of doing things. I probably will use the zip ties in there, but for the most part, I'm not going to be using this. So, what first? Let's prep our two parts before we crack open the TRS-80. Okay, the first thing I want to do is remove this little PCB from its little block of wood that it comes shipped with. It also has some spacers in there. We're not going to use them, but I suggest they're probably worthwhile hanging on to because they look like quite a handy size. We can get rid of the original screws as well. I'm going to take my little panel and using some M3 screws, that's going to go onto there. Okay, scratch that. The standoffs I had, they're not M3. I don't know what they are. So we're just going to put this straight on here. Come back. And which is more than fine. All right, and that's that mounted. Next, our Meanwell power supply. Flip it over. You've got two here and two wider ones at the top. And this goes on there like that. And this does use M3 screws, I promise. except for that one, which requires a nut just to be annoying. I don't know why they... This is going to be annoying to get in there. Right. No, don't fall into the power supply. Right. Magnet for the win. Right. Make sure these are all nice and tightened up. Okay. So on here, we've got +5, negative, +12, and that will be our -12 just there. So if we grab the wires that already came with it, now I'm going to refer to the instructions because it's going to tell me exactly what colours I should use. And so we've got red, which is 5 volts. So it can go in here. Come on. Right. Brown is listed as common or negative or earth, whatever you want to call it. Orange is +12. Which leaves yellow for -12. Right, now there is one more wire I want to add to this. The instructions give you where to hook up the mains to, but it leaves the earth. It just doesn't even mention it. Now, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert, well, in anything, but I would have thought that that should be tied back to the chassis of the computer. Now, the chassis of the computer is primarily plastic, but there is metal casing around it, and they are tied back to earth. So I'm going to stick a green wire into there. This is massive overkill. I'm pretty sure this is like 15 amp wire, but it's fine. Okay, so all of this is now kind of ready to go into the machine. So I'm going to crack the machine open and we'll take it from there. And welcome to the inside of my TRS-80 Model 3 again. Right, first thing we want to do is we want to disconnect both power supplies. So they're all the connectors to go back to the CRT and the mainboard. These three up here for the floppy drives, and this big red and white and black one is the mains from the switch. We can just toss it over there. And I want to start by removing this, which is just held in by 4 screws. Hang on to these screws because we're about to reuse them. And that can go into probably the spares pile. I'm not going to throw it out. The other one can stay where it is. It can just sit there disconnected. Right, next, let's turn our attention to the front of the machine. Next thing we want to do is we want to get the keyboard out of the way. I've already pulled the screws out, so it's the fascia. The actual keyboard has got a ribbon connector here and an earth strap. Right, they can be put to one side. And now what we want to do, let's take our mean well, and this is actually going to go in underneath the disk drive. Make sure the keyboard cable is out of the way and kind of, I'm just going to sit it there for now. Don't worry, it's not where it's staying. But I want to get an idea of cable length. Right, we want to make sure we don't chop the wrong wires because there's 4 wires here. 2 of them go to the switch and 2 of them come from the switch. So the ones that went to the power supply, make sure you trace those back. And everything's all twisted up. Right. I think I want to get rid of that zip tie. And I'm thinking probably about yay long. Okay. Worst case scenario, look, you can always solder that back on. Next, let's trim the ends of these, ready to go into the mean well. Give them a nice twist. All right, referring once again to the manual, white is neutral. Where's my screwdriver? White goes into N, like so. And black is live. And we're not going to worry about the rest of it just for now. This is the bit where it gets a little annoying and tricky. We want to tip this on its side. Whoop, I'm going to lose screws. We want to tip this on its side. Right, and the reason is this guy is going to slot back in here, and it's actually going to, there's holes in it that are going to line up with these vents, and they're right at the ends, so there'll be one roughly here, and then kind of 2 back here somewhere. Now, I am using, see if I can work out what I did with them. Now, I am just using these, I think they're about 10 mil. I'm pretty sure they're 3G self-tappers, but I'm gonna have to be on the other side of the camera. And to make life more fun, I'm the most uncoordinated left-handed person in the world, but I'm going to grab this with my right hand. I'm going to stick my head right in the way of the camera. I found one of them, so let's just get one started. Right. And if that nudges all the way to the top, I should be able to see the other one. Let's back that off a bit. There we go. And there's the other one right there. All right, don't do them up completely tight just yet. And I should see, here's the other one. And finally, number 4. Right, and now I should be good to tighten these all up. And there's our new little power supply tucked in underneath the disk drive. All right, I think what I want to do next is, let's get the DC voltages out of the way. So this earth lead I mentioned, it's actually going to poke back down this side and hopefully pop out the back. You know, sometimes I do these things thinking it's going to make the whole thing easier, and it just doesn't. Aha! I got it. Right. Right, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put a crimp ring on there, and I'm going to tie it into this earth spot just here. I've got a screw missing here. Oh well. Right, so in an attempt to keep this neat, which, okay, this machine's never going to be neat, I'm going to use one of the little zip tie sticky downy things, and I'm going to put it in this corner, just down in here. But before I stick it in, because it's such a turd of a place, I'm actually going to put the zip tie into it first, right? Then put it down, and then, actually I might bring all these underneath the mains, right, like that, right, and I should be able to there we go, look at that, cable management. Had to start sooner or later. Okay, turning our attention to this kind of area. This is actually going to mount there like that. So for another attempt at neatness, I'm going to put another one of these zip tie sticky down holdy things, and I'm going to put it here. I'm going to grab a zip tie, and yes, before you ask, I am making this up as I go along. Put you there. Bring all these that I've already got all tangled up down through here and come back. I'm probably covering this whole thing with my hands and you can't see shit, but anyway. All right, make sure there's a little bit of tension on the wires. And of course it comes straight off, stick. Probably should have cleaned the surface first. Okay, using the screws that held the original power supply in, I'm going to just get one side started loosely. Right, and then before we pin in the other side, I want all these wires to come up through the back. Like so. Now, for the sake of neatness, normally at this point I would try and trim all these to length. The problem is that I know the moment I do, they're going to end up too short or I'm going to lose them down behind. I am going to trim them a bit. I don't need that much length on them, right? Trim the tips of them. Give them a bit of a twist so you don't have little random strands. Right, this actually brings me probably to my one complaint. I'm not going to bother showing you because the whole point is you can't see it. The voltages are actually printed on the silk screen and then covered by this. So yeah, the instructions do tell you what order to put the colours in though. So we go red with our very, very small flathead screwdriver. We go red, brown, orange, and then yellow. All right, and that is now our main well connected to our breakout board. Now, the instructions suggest that we connect this and test to check for the LEDs before we plug anything in. Hey, 3 LEDs. That's got to be good. Now, these ports are actually labelled. Not that it should really make any difference, but we've got CPU vid, which I'm guessing is CRT, and RS-232, which I don't have, and then floppy drive controller, floppy drive 1 and floppy drive 2. So what I am actually going to do is I've disconnected the power from the main board, but I'm going to plug the main board plug in where it says CPU, and I'm going to run my multimeter across these just to make sure we're getting what we should. Turn it on. We have our LEDs, okay, and we should have, right, red is 5 volts. Whoop, come on. 5 volts, good. Oh, I've got my pins around the wrong way. Orange should be plus 12. Yep, and yellow should be minus 12. Why do I have no minus 12? There we go, minus 12. Nice. All right, I'm happy with that, so it's time to plug stuff in. All right, vid or CRT into there. My amp was using, I think, the RS-232 one. We've got that's floppy drive controller. That's floppy drive 2. And that's floppy drive 1. Like I said, not that it should really make that much difference. Okay, I have placed the Model 3 into the traditional testing position. Everything's plugged in. This is legitimately the first time I've turned it on with the power supply. It should be fine. I've checked the it'll be fine. No? Huh? I didn't plug the main board back in after testing it. Test number 2. Haha, it says diskette. I don't have a keyboard plugged in at the moment. Right, I'll now put this all back together. And there we go, the well-loved TRS-80 Model 3 that has had more hits than Elvis now has a shiny new power supply in there. Do I think that it's going to actually fix the issue that I had? There's probably a good 50-50 chance at least, but if nothing else, I've imparted onto you at least a method for replacing the power supply in a Model 3. And I reckon it probably would work for a Model 4 as well. I can't see any reason why not. So there we go. The mighty old Model 3 lives again. But for now, that will pretty much do it. If you liked the video, click like, subscribe, all the usual YouTubey stuff. And don't forget to check out the rest of SepTandy here on YouTube. And as always, a massive shout out to my Patreons who are scrolling up the screen as I speak. Without them, I wouldn't be able to keep beat up old Tandies running. And if you'd like to help support the channel, there is a link in the description. But until then, I'll see you in the next one.